And look at the people. And I think I'm the only person here. Participants one. We'll let this run in the background, but you can see here right now, that's what we got. All right. So I'm going to let you go here, Salem, and this is working. And I'm going to sit down here.
Just gonna kind of face towards you all so I can
Oh, yeah.
kind of see you all. I got the presentation up. That works for you. So, thanks for having us this evening. I'm Salem Bush. I work for the Department of Planning and Development for Fairfax County. And Molly's with me. He works in the branch that I work in. We work in what's called the planning division, which mainly means we work a lot with the comprehensive plan for the county. And specifically, we work a lot with public facilities in the county. So we have a process that we call the 2232 process, which is basically an approval process for public facilities that are coming through the county. So I don't know if you all have looked at 2232 projects, public facilities. You probably have.
Yes, we have.
Yeah. Okay. So you're aware of some of those projects that have come through. So like, for example, a building like this that we're sitting in tonight is considered a public facility. So this would come through you all for a recommendation that would then go to the planning commission for their ultimate approval for 2232 projects. So what we're doing tonight is over the last year or so, I've been working on an update to what we call the public facility policy plan. And that's part of the comprehensive plan. And I'm going to go through a little bit about kind of what the comprehensive plan is, how the public facility policy plan fits into that, how the policy plan fits into how we review public facilities coming through the county, and kind of what we're doing and why we're updating that plan. So you'll see it's probably in the notes that Jeff gave to you tonight. So there is an address to our policy plan amendment website. And so if you go to that address, you can find more information about the plan update as we're going along and working on this update. There's some informational videos on there that we made with Channel 16 of Fairfax County. So you can look at those. And there'll also be more meeting information as we move on through the process of updating this policy plan. So with that, so the agenda tonight, just going to go through board authorization. We're going to look at the comprehensive plan, talk about the public facility policy plan, and talk to you about some meetings that we've already had, and then talk a little bit about the project timeline, and then have some time for questions and discussion. So as we're moving through, just feel free to ask me any questions. If you have anything, I'm happy to stop and answer questions in the middle as well. So basically, just all the comprehensive plans, anytime there is a comprehensive plan update, the Board of Supervisors has to authorize that plan update. So this plan update was authorized by the Board of Supervisors on July 14th, 2020. Part of the authorization was to update the public facility policy plan, which I've talked about a little bit, but it was also to update the area plans of the comprehensive plan, and then also including reviewing alignment of those updates with the CIP, the Capital Improvement Program. And then also to wrap in the public schools element of the public facilities section of the policy plan, which included the schools committee recommendations. So the schools committee met like a few years ago, and that was a combination of the Board of Supervisors and the school board, and they came up with a bunch of recommendations that were related to policy plan work in the comprehensive plan. And specifically, they had some recommendations related to the public facilities element that I'm talking about tonight. So that's going to be part of this update that we're doing. So basically this project is, you can look at it as two phases. The first phase we're in right now, which is updating the actual public facilities element of the policy plan. The second phase will then move into those area plans, the comprehensive plan, and focus on those. That'll begin after phase one. So I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with the comprehensive plan, but it's basically broken up into a few different sections. There is the policy plans. Those are goals and policies, objectives relating to a bunch of different topics, particularly land use, which is the biggest one for our comprehensive plan, transportation, housing, the environment, human services, public facilities, which is the one we're talking about tonight, parks and recreation, revitalization districts, economic development, and heritage resources. And then you also have a whole other section of the conference plan, which gets way more detailed into like parts of the county and specific areas of the county. So when I talk about the policy plan, we're talking about policies related to everything in the county. We're talking about the plan areas. We're talking about actual areas of the county. So that gets kind of, if you drill down a little bit deeper, you can kind of look into it as actually at the planning district level, and then you drill a little bit deeper and you actually start talking about community planning sectors, is what we call them. So then there's also plan maps, which are part of the comprehensive plan too. So again, these are the chapters in the policy plan. We're looking at the public facilities one. So really, when you look at the policy plan, it's broken up into, I would say, two kind of main sections. There's the first section of the public facility policy plan, which is county-wide objectives and goals. That would apply to all public facilities throughout the county. And then as you get into the plan, it actually starts talking about specific facilities throughout the county. So as the example up here, I have the sanitary sewer one. So there's actually particular policies and objectives related to the specific types. And I'm going to tell you what those types are here on the next slide. So within this plan, the different sections are public schools. So there's policies and objectives related to how to locate, and how public schools should be located, the aesthetics, the character, the extent of those schools throughout the county. There's libraries, there's public safety, which includes police, fire and rescue, sheriff, courts, and animal control. And then there's also a lot of utility services such as water supply, sanitary sewer, solid waste, drainage systems improvements, vehicle maintenance facilities. It also includes electrical land distribution. So if you like the electrical substations that are out there, that's one. I think there was just one that happened in the Sully District.
Earlier this year, the people of Dominion Electric came in and talked about the power supply that they would need to support the Amazon data warehouse that's going on the former Ed's property.
Right.
Okay? We thought it was funny is that the tail was wagging the dog. We never heard about the big change of ripping down Ed's and putting in Amazon, but we heard about the power supply that had to power this big change. So one thing went over without any input from us, without any acknowledgement from us. We said, but we need this. The question was, why do you need this? Well, aren't you familiar with this? No, nobody mentioned that to us. So sometimes it seems highly irregular or out of order that we're discussing the little thing that's required for the thing that we had no control over.
Right.
And what we later determined out of that was, well, data centers are a by right.
It's
In
certainly,
that certain area.
In that particular.
it was an industrial zone area.
Yeah, so we're looking at it and said, well, wait.
Was that the one on EDS Drive?
Yes.
Ed's drop.
Yeah, Oh, it's called Ed's.
Well,
I call
it's
it-
no such thing as EDS. I worked for EDS, but when EDS disappeared, it's EDS, so that's Ed.
Gotcha.
I wasn't afraid, so it's not really.
Understand, but Tyson doesn't have.
You confused me with Ed's. I was like, so I worked on that 2232 project, and it was, so the data center was by right. Actually, the substation was by right, except for that state code drives the 2232 process. And so state code basically dictates what we can and what we can or have to review and what we cannot review. And substations is one of the things that we do have to review if that substation is providing electrical power to the grid or to the public. And in this case, it was mostly going to be providing power to Amazon, but they were going to say that they were going to store power and then potentially distribute power to the public if they needed to.
And we asked, who's paying for this? Is Amazon paying this? No, you are, and the Encompass, we, the Royal, we're all paying for that substation, that 95% of it's going to Amazon.
And that was an I-5 district, I want to say, or something like that. So in the industrial zone districts, a data center is by right. And, so you could probably make arguments about what types of industrial uses could go in there. There could be ones that could be maybe more impactful to the community than a data center. But at any rate, we had no control over reviewing that data center either. We didn't have much contact with Amazon or the people that were doing the data center, but we did review the substation. So my overall point was we do review substations. We also do review a lot of telecommunications facilities as well. So like,
Since we were on the subject, I just have
Sure.
to comment.
Yeah.
I'm going to,
go for it.
well, maybe not, but the data center that's going in on in Avion Office Park. I mean, that thing, it looks like it's practically on Route 50.
I haven't seen that one yet, but that has a substation associated with it too.
No, actually, I don't think it
I think
does.
it comes with the sub.
But I'm just saying that it would be nice if we had some
Control over
say,
that,
some
yeah.
control over setbacks. I mean, it looks like it's right on the damn highway. It looks like
Beautiful flying buttresses that are keeping it upright until it's finished.
it looks like you're gonna run into them.
Yeah, they're not the most like attractive buildings. I mean, they're pretty plain, giant kind of buildings. Like, there's not much to them.
Yeah, they're basically a large warehouse facility
Basically, that's what they look like, yeah.
with,
With a big fan.
with
top.
computer servers.
Right, and yeah.
What about large recreational facilities?
Yeah,
Are you working with the planning park authority? Are they providing them any update or?
yes. So that's a very good question. So I know that it's not on here, but what I wanted to point out is, so we do review any new like parks or recreation, like a rec center or even a public park. That will come through the 2232 process. The other thing that's not, you don't see on here is a lot of health and human service like types of facilities. So like a public health clinic or something for the Department of Public Family Services or any of those types of buildings. Now, the reason why those aren't in this document is because they have their own policy plans. So I'll go back and show you. So see how I had the chapters here at the policy plan? See that there's one that's human services and there's one that's parks and recreation. Their direction on those are contained in those policy plans. So when we review a 2232, we will pull from those plans as part of our review to make sure that their proposal is aligning with our comprehensive plan. But those would be updated separately. So they're not part of this. So we're not looking at like the park sections or the human resource sections. The human services section is supposed to be updated soon as well. So they are something that we review, but they're not part of this document because they have their own separate sections in the comp plan.
Because we heard something about there was some plans about the part of the western part of the district, some exhibition center or something like that.
Okay.
And I was wondering if it is coming through the land use planning, comprehensive plan, or is it the park authority?
I'm not sure. I'd have to know more about what it is.
Yeah, I just heard from some people talking about it. I don't know.
So when we review, if it's owned by the county, like if it's owned by the Board of Supervisors or Fairfax County, and it's going to be used in a public way, then typically that is almost all the time that is going to come through the 2232 process. Now, sometimes there's partnerships with the county where it's actually a private developer building a private, could be something like that, and then it might not go through the 2232 process if it's going to be a private development.
So the P3s don't go through at all?
Some P3s would. It depends. If it's going to be on like county property and it's going to be open to the public and it's going to be a public project, yeah, some P3s will. Yeah, it just depends. But if it's going to be given over to like a developer and it's going to be their property.
I think that property is owned by the park authority, not the present.
Okay. Yeah. So if it is, then yes, if it's a new project now. It's some projects, like if it's just a park facility and they're just changing some of the layout of the park or they're changing some minor details of the park, that's not going to come through. It's usually if it's a big expansion of something or if it's like a brand new project, that'll come through. It should, yeah. Any new park, yeah, will come through us. Yep. Yep.
I think so. I noticed the reference to the Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah.
So what would influence that? I mean, would like it's a large development like the Fairfax County Government Center apply to that? I mean, what would affect? How would that?
The Chesapeake Bay chapter. I'm not like very familiar with the Chesapeake Bay chapter, but I know it was put in place when a lot of the regulations about the Chesapeake Bay protecting the watershed and all that came through. And I know it has a lot to do with that. I think that was one of the later chapters that was implemented. I think it just gives a lot of direction on protection of the Chesapeake Bay. So
It's not really project specific.
I don't think so. And now again, I am not an expert of that chapter. I personally never used it. I imagine our environmental review folks might pull from that at times. But don't know a lot about that one.
What's cross-county coordination?
I'm sorry.
Cross-county coordination?
In terms of like projects,
County, Loudoun County, coordination with projects versus their comp plans.
quite a bit, depending on the project, like, so, if anything is on the border of the counties, there's usually the counties will get together and they'll meet and review projects together. Same thing with like, Falls Church, City of Falls Church or anything, any of the smaller. Fairfax City, there's a lot of coordination, like the judicial complex is being looked at to be, a holding plan for the judicial complex to add stuff. So a lot of that coordination, like Fairfax City, the county actually owns the property within Fairfax City. But Fairfax City was on the like task force to help develop the plan for that, for like the master plan for the judicial complex. So there's a lot of coordination like that. We give comments to counties, like I know, I don't know a ton about this project, but I know Prince William right now is, Prince William County is updating their entire comprehensive plan, and they're changing a lot of things. And I know, for example, the Board of Supervisors, I believe, recently sent them a letter to talk about some of the changes that are happening in the comprehensive plan. Their recommendations, staff will review like their comprehensive plan recommendations at Fairfax County and give like a staff report to our board, give a recommendation to our board, say what staff thinks could be the implications for the county. The board will typically respond by writing an official letter to that county or something like that, telling them the county's position on their changes and how it affects.
Set of events going on in Prince William County
There is, yeah,
right now.
Yeah.
As it relates to popcorn watch,
correct.
which I would think that your folks would be having,
They are.
because the reason that property on the Prince William side was conserved because of what Fairfax County came back in the 80s.
Yes.
Originally, to try and technology.
Yep.
It seems that there's a total lack of coordination. And
Well, I would, yeah. I think there's quite a bit of, well, I think there's a lot of input that's coming from our county to them. I don't know like about exactly the coordination details of that, but I can tell you that our county has been viewing what they've been doing and communicating with them about it. If you go back and watch the last Board of Supervisors meeting, the board talked specifically about what you're talking about, and there was staff recommendation. What's that?
water,
Oh.
very, very, much thinner than
There's
water.
much to do about.
Several of us had suggested.
Both
Both
the
the
Fairfax
Fairfax
Federation,
Federation, Sully District Council, Citizens, us,
and
Mount
Mount
Vernon
Vernon Council
Council,
all
wrote
wrote
this
saying,
saying,
we should
we should object at the comprehensive plan time, not at the zoning, because it's too late for zoning.
Yeah, I don't know like all the details of it, but I did watch the board meeting and I wasn't involved in the reports, but there were people in my division that were involved in reviewing that project, or reviewing the comp plan language. And they were some of the ones when I watched that board meeting and they were talking about the staff report. Those are staff from our office that have written that staff report.
Was that staff report adopted by the county?
Well, the staff report doesn't get adopted, it's really just language and recommendations to the board from the staff point of view about like what staff thinks about what they're doing.
Yeah, I understand that, but we have been working with the planning commission and the county staff for 2 millennia. And we know that what the staff writes is usually what ends up being, unless there's enough heat turned up to make it a politically wise decision. And so my question was,
were your coworkers happy or sad with this whole thing?
I did talk to them about that.
Okay, because if they were sad,
Yeah,
that means what they recommended didn't go through.
yeah, I haven't had a chance to catch up with them on it, but, so.
all right, everything is black.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
Jim Hart is joining us, and I want to make
Okay.
sure that he can see what, can you see what we see, right? So let's go sharing again. And share here. Share. Okay. And I think we're back to, okay, so we're here. And now we're going to say, where is the presentation? All right, let's go down here. And I think this is presentation mode. Now I'm going to ask him whether or not he sees it.
And so, oh, Audio is better than usual.
Congratulations.
Okay, you can hear it. Good.
Okay.
So we have Jim with us now. All right, excellent. Okay. Okay, so moving on. So just to talk about the intent of this plan, how is the plan actually used? Yep. Okay. So the plan, this language comes directly from the existing plan, page 1. So the plan is to provide specific public facility guidance on the following: the appropriate general location of new facilities, appropriate specific location criteria such as site size, access, screening for different facility types, service level standards which indicate the number of new facilities, methods for determining the specific need and appropriate timing of facilities, and I can't see the bottom one, so I'll just skip that one. You get the point.
Let's see if I can get rid of the.
Yeah, I've captioned it. Do you want to? Yeah. Okay.
How do you get rid of the closed caption? Close, oh, here,
Sure.
maybe I click close.
Fantastic. There it is.
See, and now we go here, and now we go, so. This right? No, that doesn't do any good.
That's fine. You can.
I'm just gonna move
That doesn't
him,
bother me.
there we go, all right? If we need him, he's there.
Okay. All right, the last one, the acceptable character extent of facilities and measures of attainment. So that really, a lot of that comes from the state code, what the state code allows you to do with 2232 review. See?
Usually,
There we go. All right, so how do we actually use the plan? Like I said, you guys are familiar with the 2232 review process. That is, I would say, the primary way that we use the plan. So, basically, just very quickly summarize how the 2232 process works. There's an applicant. Typically, the applicant is a county agency. Sometimes it's an outside agency, like for the cell tower or for the substation. That's going to be a private organization. But a lot of times, it's actually a county agency that is needing a new facility in county. And so they work with usually our Department of Public Works Capital Facilities, and they come up with a plan to build a new facility somewhere. And at that point, they'll submit a 2232 application. They'll give it to staff. Staff then has a whole review team throughout the county that reviews these applications against the comprehensive plan guidance, make sure that the project aligns with the comprehensive plan. Staff develops a staff report, takes it to the planning commission, or will come through a committee like this, then go to the planning commission. The planning commission ultimately are the ones that have final approval of 2232. So that's very quick snapshot of how that works. We also use the plan to guide the CIP process. And both of these 2232 capital improvement program process, both are state code requirements. And CIP actually states that projects that are introduced to CIP also need to align with the comprehensive plan guidance.
So is that what we're saying then, does the final decision stop then? Planning commission doesn't have to go on Board of Supervisors?
Yeah, 2232's the final action is by the planning commission. Now, the board can always step in and veto the planning commission's decision. They can always ask to review the project itself. That has not happened very often. I haven't seen it happen in my time. So that can happen. The project can be appealed by the property owner. And then the board will review that appeal. With the CIP goes to the planning commission and then it's ultimately adopted by the board. So the CIP goes to the board. So really, this slide is just kind of showing you how all this process is connected to. I do want to say that, again, there's a couple of sections that I talked about the plan. There's the policy plan, which we're talking about tonight, but there's also the area plan. So when we're looking at 2232 projects, we are both looking at policy plan language, but we're also looking at the specific area plan guidance, because that area plan will talk about sometimes it'll reference specific public facilities need for those facilities. So that will give us justification to move on to the project, or justification for approval for that project. And so those all kind of feed into the 2232 process. And the other important thing I want to note here is that we aren't the only ones that staff are using this plan. Applicants should be using this plan, like the applicants are developing a project, should be reviewing the comprehensive plan, using language in the comprehensive plan, making sure that projects in line with the plan they submit for their application. So applicants use it, staff uses it, the planning commission uses it, and the board should be using it too when it comes to the CIP. So this slide, what I really want to kind of point out here is there's a couple of different things. One, I want to point out the opportunities for public input throughout the process. Really, this slide shows really how you develop a facility in the county from start to finish. And so What we do in the county is when I'm talking about 2230 review or the CIP, that's just a piece of the whole plan to like plan a new public facility. So like I said, I won't go through the details of all this. I could probably talk for 45 minutes about how this whole process works. The other thing I want to kind of point out is that I have some stars in there. Those are really the opportunities for public input on projects. So during the CIP program, there's a bunch of committee meetings, there's planning commission meetings, both committee meetings, planning commission, committee meetings with the board, and there's planning commission public hearings, board public hearings. So there's an opportunity for the public to comment on projects at that time. During the project design, our cap, usually, like I said, Department of Public Works capital facilities usually are the ones that are leading these projects. They will take these projects and imagine they've come probably to this committee here and probably presented their plans for their design for their project. So they will do public input. They'll go to the community, show the project off when they're doing the design, working on the design. And then when it gets to 2232 review, there's public hearings involved in that too. And I will say too that during the 2232 review, by the time it gets to that point, usually the project is designed to about 90%. So it's pretty well designed at that point. There can be some minor changes that can occur. But at that point, the project is pretty well thought out. It's pretty well developed. And then obviously once that's approved, you can move on to get construction permits, it goes through site and building plan reviews, which are administrative reviews by staff. But those reviews do look at zoning ordinance, they look at building code and all that to make sure the project is in conformance with those. And then you can have the project to construction. So
What kind of notice when is the public if there is something in the works? How far in advance public?
well, it depends. Like there's different ways the projects are advertised. So during the capital improvement program, I would say like a lot of the advertisements are like advertised on the county website or on channel 16 to let people know that the board meetings or the planning commission meetings are coming up and they're going to be talking about the CIP. When it's a project design, what usually happens in those is our like the Department of Public Works Capital Facilities Group, they will usually contact the Board of Supervisors office. So in the Sully District, they contact the board office. They'd ask the board office, what community should we reach out to? Who do we need to contact in the community that this project may affect? So depending on where the project is located, usually the board office will then give some direction to them on if they need to come to, like, for example, this meeting, or they might need to do some mailers out to the public. We recently had a project where the board office and capital facilities office, they coordinated to mail letters out to adjoining property owners in an area where there was going to be a temporary fire station located potentially, or proposed temporary fire station. So sometimes there'll be mailers like that, but usually the board office will help coordinate. They're the ones that are more in touch with, local community and kind of dictate that. When it gets to the 2232 review, we are required by state law to send out flyers to adjoining property owners for the project. And usually we go beyond that. We don't just mail them out to just the adjoining property owners. We'll do that, but we'll also try to take a good look and contact nearby HOAs, contact those HOA presidents or the association, however we contact them, let them know that's happening, send them a letter, let them know about us, send an email, or we'll even go further out into neighborhoods depending on the project. Just
So they don't put up yellow
they
posters that says public notice and then provide all the details.
do that
They
too.
do that.
Yeah, they do that too. So they do that, I believe. So those, I think they do that for 2232s. I know they do that whenever there's a zoning case. And so a lot of times when it's a 2232 project, I would say 75% of the time, there's also concurrent zoning actions taking place. So like a special exception permit might be happening or rezoning. And so they'll kind of work together. And I know they're required to put up those.
But the sign will only be installed if there is a city.
The signs are, I don't know the exact rules on those signs. I'm not the one that coordinates putting those signs up, but I do contact the person who puts the signs up every time we have a project. So they're the ones that come out and actually put the signs up. But I think it is tied to a public hearing. I think it is. Yeah. I think you're right.
What do you think about for the people to do application and review? And by that time, it's still, it's basically the program is already designed, and It's just maybe modified with the construction was not that within their next week, so. But it's
Yeah.
just like-
Yeah, so once it gets past the 2232 review, it becomes, they have to still comply with a lot of different rules. Like I said, the zoning ordinance, the building code. And so at that point, there's not a lot of input. I would say that the residents have something to do to like stop the project. I mean, now there is input that that the residents can give, like, for example, with that substation we were just talking about. We had the 2232 meeting. A lot of residents showed up for that meeting that we had. And we met with, and because so many residents showed up, the 2232 was still approved because it was still legally, everything that the applicant proposed was still legal, above board. There wasn't a reason to deny it. But there were still a lot of residents who were concerned with the project, data center, substation. In that case, we met with the planning commissioner. We met, I think, with the board office, and we actually provided some extra meetings with our land development services. Land development services are the ones that are going to coordinate the site plans and the building plans. And so we held special meetings to talk to the residents about what was going to be happening there, and then to relay the comments from the residents to the developers that were doing that project, in the hopes that they might change things. Now, legally, did they have to change anything? No. I don't know if they ever did or didn't. I don't know if they put in, some of the concerns I know the residents had in that case were, is there going to be enough separation from the buildings and like the playground that was nearby? Is there going to be protection from the kids? Are you going to put some trees up so that like we're not just looking at the building walls? Now, we could force them to do everything up to the point that the zoning ordinance require, but nothing more than that. And so we, out of good faith, we held the extra meetings. We, had the residents give comments. We relayed those. Now, I don't know if that developer ever went through with doing any of those additional things. I would hope that they did, but I have no idea. So there are times where you can still give comments to like land development services when it gets to that point where it's site and building plan. And there's nothing that requires them to do anything, but sometimes they will accommodate residents in some cases. So it's always worth a shot. So the input is never over. These are just points where the input is designed in the whole process.
And on situations like that, have instances where, say, the county has reached out to the developer and say, we really want to have one of your representatives at this upcoming meeting?
Yes, we have strongly encouraged certain developers at times to reach out to the community, to hold their own meetings, to maybe come to one of our meetings. Now we can't, like in the 2232 process, I can't require an applicant or a developer. I can't require anybody to do public hearings. I can't require anybody to go and do public meetings. I can't require them to come here. I can strongly encourage them to do that. But there's nothing that state law says that they have to do those kind of things. The state law does require, if the planning commission chooses to hold a public hearing. The planning commission doesn't even have to have a public hearing for any of these projects. But typically, the planning commission always does for these projects. So that's not required by state.
Just seems to me that it's set up for the benefit of the county and the development. And public is the last to find out something and has the least opportunity to really voice their concerns, objections, thoughts, recommendations, etc. It's always too far down the path. We get past all these milestones and these dates, and the public is well advised about even given opportunity to voice some concerns. By the time it's their turn, nothing gets done, right?
That's one way to look at it. I would say,
It's going well.
I would say that the 2232 process, again, is state code requirement, right? And it's an added layer. The whole way I look at the 2232 process is an added layer of transparency that the government is required to do to make sure that the public knows about projects that the county or whatever locality is building and constructing. That's kind of, to me, one of the main purposes of it. So it's an added layer that exists for that reason.
Tell me when the project is 90% ready, does us no good. If I knew it when it was 10 or 20% ready, then we would have a fair opportunity the voice of the clock.
And so that's the reason why when there's an opportunity before that point during the project design, when they're working on that design to bring the project to you all, and they should be doing it before it's completely 90% done. We've run into a lot of problems with that too. So it's like the other way around. If the project is only like 30% designed and it gets to the 2232 level, well, then it gets in front of the planning commissioner, it gets in front of a group like you all potentially, and you go, what's going to happen out here? What is this project going to look like? We want to see more. We want to see what this project going to look like because we don't have designed that for yet. You know what I mean? So it's got to be catch-22 because that was a problem before. The 2230 process forward worked a little bit more like that, but then it became a problem because now we want to see the design. We wanted more design. We want to make sure that, like, particularly, I can say that the project I've seen at the Planning Commission, they want to see that the project that is being proposed at the 2232 level is generally meeting our zoning ordinance. And when they do that, it has to be pretty well designed. You see what I'm saying? So I would say there's.
But it could be also a comment about having more frequent meetings. Where they're brought into early in the process, we used to call it early and often. Brought in early and often, so public has to review the project as the planning commission going through their development. As development in the noise. Because again, by the time it's 90%, we can't put a tree in because we don't have enough space. There's no room to move it away from the playground.
I see your point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe on could be the capital improvement program, maybe in there.
Yeah. So the capital improvement program, it's a good time to find out about what generally your projects are going to go. Sometimes the capital improvement program, I would say, like projects are definitely very different in terms of their design. I mean, we're talking about probably hundreds of projects in the capital improvement program. And so some of the projects in the capital improvement program, you have a pretty good idea of what they're going to be. You know, you might need like 100,000 square foot police station. And it's very general, maybe 120,000 square foot police station. We don't know what it's going to look like. And sometimes they even have a location identified, but sometimes at that CIP level, they don't even have a location yet. They just have, we know we need to build a police station in Sully District, we need a new one, but we're not sure where we're going to put it yet. So it can kind of be all over the place too, this is where it is in CIP. And so there's not always a lot of detail at the CIP.
At that point, you think go by the districts.
They-
Supervisory district, this is pretty program.
They do divide it up, but they do have a section that divides it up.
Based on that, we know that this is making value could be from 5 to 10.
That's correct.
Are you planning it by magistrate district or by planning division? I know we're in the Club One planning district, right?
Yeah, but they're being planned by supervisor district.
And so what is the Couple One planning district?
It's I believe that one's part of the comprehensive planning district.
So there's a difference.
There is a difference. And the reason why there's a difference is because the planning districts were taught a long time ago, and they don't change. They stay the same. They were drawn many years ago. They're part of a planning document. The supervisor districts do change quite a bit. Yeah, things move, boundaries change. And so we can't like open up the comp plan every year, change so I wish it matched up because it is frustrating.
I mean, for example, when we think of the three Sully high schools, one of them was in Sully. Shapley's in the other one,
Mhm.
Springfield, and so is Centerville in Springfield, right? The only one that's in Sully is Westfield. Now, they might have all had been in Sully, but they've been moved out.
Yeah, and that's something that I was asked to be on the citizen advisory group when the Dulles Suburban Center. Years ago, looking at that, and that's one of the things that we look at, these patterns. So,
Yeah.
they make no logical sense whatsoever.
Right.
You say, well, it follows this road except for this 1,000 feet where it moves up here. So
Right.
it's just silly. Well, we can't change that. Why not? So
Yeah,
It's something where I understand that it's a tedious process. Right? That it's a lot less technical now than it used to be. GIS and everything.
True.
Let's make it reasonable and logical.
yeah.
And it'll be beneficial to everybody involved.
Yeah, I think the planning districts to me are more logical. The supervisor districts are the ones that have really weird shapes.
They do, because those are sub-allocated every 10 years on the basis of precincts.
Right.
Say, well, precinct is kind of an imaginary sub-area anyway.
Correct.
They got them track farm.
Mhm.
And I mean, we're checking them all precincts. In the fact, so really, it shouldn't be more than 2 at the most, on each side and the west side. But it's not even further. It's like, no, it's just silly, but that's all. It's not.
Yeah, a lot of the boundaries, they're different. A lot of some of the boundaries are roads, right? Like some of the boundaries are natural boundaries, like streams or valleys. And then, you know, some of the boundaries are just imaginary lines that were created.
Well, right, and I think first too, I mean, I'm figuring out engineers. So, well, you're right, that's what should be used for boundary definitions.
Mhm.
Something you can physically look at.
Right.
Or, in instances, here's a legally defined boundary right between Fairfax and Loudoun County.
Right.
There's no physical element, it's just a sign that says it crosses county, Loudoun County.
Yeah. Yeah, that still makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. So just moving on a little bit. So why are we getting this plan? The plan is a little bit outdated. I think it might be near the same age as Sully District itself from the early 1990s. There have been some updates to it, but not a big comprehensive update to the policy plan itself. So there's a lot of outdated language. As you all know, the county's changed quite a bit in the last 20, 30 years. There's also a lot of things that have been going on in the county, a lot of county visioning, a lot of other documents that have been approved. So one of the objectives is to align it more with the CIP process. The countywide strategic plan was adopted by the board just over a year ago. So trying to align it with the countywide strategic plan is one of the goals. And then also one Fairfax policy is an equity policy that was approved by the county, I think about over 5 years ago. So aligning with that equity policy. And then a big part of this update has been a lot of coordination of myself and our department with a lot of the other agencies within the county. So the agencies that are planning for their own public facilities, and then agencies that are reviewing these facilities as we go through it. So, and then of course, also the community input, which is why we're here tonight and why we've been holding public.
Not a strategy or priorities, a countywide priority. And they had meetings over the last, I think, pre-pandemic, where they had outreach and they came up with priorities.
Yeah.
How those been translated to strategies? Where did the prioritization effort end up? How did it translate as a team?
So there's the countywide strategic plan, which has been adopted. And like you said, there's going to be more specific strategies. I know they are flushing those out still, I believe.
So I'm talking about the priorities, prioritization. They had all these 17 different groups with all these startup things, and they sat down and threw yellow darts and green darts.
Right.
So is that becoming the strategies, or is there where did that, you say it has not been properly cured in the process?
I think it's starting to. I think that the board has identified some of the strategies within the countywide strategic plan to start prioritizing and focusing on. Some of those have been selected.
So if we ask somebody from the department, vice executive, who would be the person that we would ask if we wanted to be briefed on shaping the future together, Fairfax County strategic plan?
That is coming out of the county executive's office.
So we should send a note to Jeff David, county executive, and say, could you have somebody address this?
Yeah, Brian Hill has a specific staff that has been working on the strategic plan.
And I think that was something somebody mentioned that we want to hear about. And we might invite somebody to talk about Fairfax simultaneously and see how they work and do.
Yeah, I can give you the name. I know the contact who's been.
If you would send me a link.
Yeah, do you mind making a note of that, Mel? The contact for the strategic plan.
We'll reach out to them.
Yes, I've met with her a couple of times in my process of this update to get a feeling of what the strategic plan is shaping out and what we need to do with it as staff, how we need to use it. So yeah, I know the person that you can talk to. I'm trying to remember the name right now, but Mo's going to get it for us. We'll send it.
This is the person who is responsible, Poncho, for shaping the future of these Fairfax County.
I mean, I don't know if they're the honcho, but they're like the coordinator for.
Okay, well,
There's a lot of people working on it. This was an effort across the county with pretty much all the departments involved.
what happened, I remember going to some of these presentations and meetings, is they have the parks authorities that we want all of our sites to be transportation, easy to get to transportation. You go to the transportation, and they didn't mention that one of their priorities is to make all the parks and recreations a priority to get to. So I said, if you don't put it in that, you're backwards. I mean, they did not cross-pollinate, at least when they were presenting them. You had this year that talked about that, but it wasn't both sides talking to the same point.
And a lot, it can be as simple as say a single term. Okay, assessment. What do you mean by assessment? You know, if you're saying, is it ADA compliant assessment? For moving an individual from the medicines.
Right.
Well, yeah, anybody in county can get to this park via these different modes.
Yeah, accessible can mean a lot of different things. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the strategic plan, I mean, the way I look at it is a visioning document. So doesn't get into really specific details of this is exactly what we're going to do. It's very general ideas that the county wants to pursue, and then it kind of works its way down into other planning documents like the one I'm talking about tonight. So again, this is just a graphic, basically the last thing that I showed you. Just this is all the input that we're taking to direct the update to this plan. So we've already had a bunch of meetings so far on this plan. We have met with the planning commission, or specifically been meeting with the planning commission review process review committee. So we met with them a couple of times last year to plan off. We met with them back in October. We talked about the 2232 review process, a little bit more detail. We're meeting with them tomorrow night, actually. And we're going to be talking about the topics of co-location facilities and the PPEA process, P3 process, and how that relates to public facilities. So if you're feel free to tune into the planning commission meeting. I'll be there to talk to them about that. And then we will continue to schedule additional meetings with that land use committee and then eventually the full planning commission and other committees throughout the county as we move on through the approval process. And there's a link there. I'm sure you guys know how to access the planning commission meetings. Feel free to go back and watch any of those if you'd like to. And this graphic, it just shows, I probably have left off a few, but this is a lot of the agencies that I've already talked to about this plan. So well over 30 agencies. You can see Fairfax County has a lot of different agencies. All these agencies either represent agencies that are planning for their own new facilities, or they're part of the review process when we're talking about the 2232 review process, or they do both. So
some of them are in the county agency. You have,
yeah, some are.
Electric.
Correct, yeah.
Agency.
So
you have Fairfax Water, which is an independent one, right?
Correct, yeah. So some of them are county agencies, you're right. Some of them are private entities, but I have interviewed them, talked to them about this plan update because they're very, because anytime like a new Fairfax water facility comes in the county, that's reviewed by us. So we've got input on the update as well. So just kind of a graphic just to kind of show you all the different agencies we talked to, but you're right. Some of them are outside the county.
What we just want to This is the development plan just for the public, too.
Public facilities.
Public.
Mm-hmm.
There's another comprehensive plan for other things.
No. One comprehensive plan is the section of the comprehensive plan.
Correct.
Because remember, we went the first one of the first slides, showed those are all sections of the comprehensive plan.
Yep, that's right.
On the charts. So this pack of list is Virginia DOT in there anywhere?
VDOT, yeah, I think they're in there.
From the bottom. Okay.
I definitely talked to VDOT, but like I said, there might be one or two I left. Yeah, that's different, but I have talked to VDOT.
We got XCDOT there too.
Yeah, FCDOT, yep. So I've talked, but I have talked to VDOT as well, so.
And that kind of is, Virginia is one of the few states that operates basically any public highway in the Commonwealth. Unless it's a city street or unless it's a county. Counties have all the way to and London and Rika. They're all public.
Correct.
I mean, I think there's only 3 other states in the country that have something similar. I
Yeah.
think they're not as.
They maintain threats,
Yeah. Maintain everything.
Yep.
You know, it's okay, well, they're making all sorts of these things. Whether it is supportive or not supportive of other relatives.
Ultimately, they do. Yeah, they control the money.
So I would hope that since
Okay.
that in the Virginia Department of Transportation, which controls it statewide, right? We would have reasonable Pennsylvania and state of Virginia.
That's true.
I mentioned that.
You feel like our roads are better, right? Yeah.
Only since
I always
the
think
funds were improved
what is
in the last decade. Up until that time, we were facing such a severe funding restriction. Was it a decade ago that people said that there are no funds for anything in the state?
Not even.
Right.
Yeah, the roads are rough sometimes there.
From 66, and it started cutting out 66, and put in these little sections of it.
Okay, just to move on a little bit, again, I just go over some of the topics that, so again, when I interviewed all these agencies, had a lot of questions for them about this update, to get their input on it. I'll just name a few of the kind of bigger topics that came up as I was talking to them. One of the questions obviously we asked them is, how are you planning for facilities? What has changed with your planning for facilities? How are you thinking about facility development in the county? Some of the themes that came up was the lack of available existing buildings, space and land. I don't think that would be a surprise to anybody here. You know, over time, the land, there's less and less land to use in the county. So what we've seen a lot in the county as a reaction to that is there's been a lot more expansion of existing buildings. There's been a lot more rehabilitation of existing buildings. So less building new buildings, more building, rehabbing the existing buildings you have, expanding the existing properties you have. We are seeing a lot more vertical development, particularly in the more urban areas like Reston and Tyson. So a lot more urban design approach as opposed to like a long, big sprawl of buildings in one place. There's just not room for it as much as there used to be. We did talk to a lot of agencies about just competing interests for space within county facilities. And that includes nonprofits too. A lot of county agencies have a relationship with nonprofits where they have a lot of the same client base. Nonprofits would do a lot of the services that the county does not provide, so they coordinate on a lot of things. So not just thinking about agency space, but thinking about the nonprofits that support a lot of the agencies as well. And then what we have seen with a lot more development too is that I would say that public facility development, especially new development, is becoming a more opportunistic thing in that a lot of facilities are being proffered through the rezoning process, or we're seeing a lot more co-locations of facilities coming on one property to one building or adjacent properties. And so just to talk about that, co-location has been a huge topic in this plan update. It's been something that the county has been, I would say, prioritizing recently. I think we'll see a lot more of it in the future. So it's something that we've talked to a lot of agencies about, what that means for co-location, what that means for agencies. One thing I will say is that talking to all the agencies that I talked to, I didn't find any agencies that were not supportive of the idea of co-location. They're all supportive of the idea. Some had their own thoughts, concerns about it in some particular ways, but most of them are all want to take advantage of the potential of having co-location.
Right here, for example, is the police station. This one,
Exactly.
up on Route 50, they have the Fair Oaks Volunteer Fire and the Fair Oaks Police Station co-located.
Mhm.
And I think wasn't the North County Supervisor's Office and the police station co-located?
Which one is North County?
The one, the Kathy, not Kathy Houses, but the one from Alcorn and the Mill?
Oh, yep, I believe so. Yeah. There's a lot of the Board of Supervisor offices are co-located.
Oh, the ones in Braddock or with the library, One in McLean is with McLean, the McLean supervisor, not the McLean, but the transfer supervisor.
So I think we'll see a lot more of those. There are advantages for the county, obviously. There's efficiency advantages, there's cost saving advantages, but there's also advantages to residents too, and to customers, clients that are using facilities. We've particularly seen that a lot with health and human service facilities. There's a lot of also talking with the court system, like a judicial complex. They're starting to combine a lot of their facilities together because there's a lot of those agencies that might have the same clients that instead of driving all the way across the county to do something, they can come to one place and take advantage of it. So it's particularly, I would say, particularly useful for health and human services. A lot of those nonprofits I talked about.
Well, the Sully Communities that has a HSS service within the building, independent whether it's occupying there.
Yep. And then the other thing I think that it offers an opportunity for, and I think something that we'll see a lot more in the future, is combining housing with facilities. Not necessarily in the same building, but maybe on the same property, maybe sometimes on top of that facility. So I think we'll see, as you all know, one of the county's top priorities is to provide more housing options, particularly affordable housing options for residents. And so one of the ways to do that is to, combine housing facilities within the other facilities. So I think we're probably going to see more of that in the future. So trying to think about how that works has been important.
Until go ahead.
Are there any developing examples of how that's taking place?
There are. So, there's one that's being reviewed right now that's called the Residence at Government Center. So right at the main government center, right when you pull into the government center, the front part of that parking lot. There's a developer right now that's submitting for a rezoning. It is going through a plan amendment right now to build affordable housing units. I forget what the number is, but right there on the front of that property. So it would be actually on the government center property. And they're behind that property. They're running, I'm trying to think of the name of the road, but it's on the other side back where like the
Monument Drive.
Yeah, exactly. Monument Drive. On Monument Drive, there was one that was done before that. So that was a housing facility that was built too. But there are going to be more of those. I'm starting to hear more about some of those.
The area to the north of the Chantilly Library, the library set back from Route 50. That's all county property. And there's going to be a senior center built into that. Instead, that's been included in this SDC, the Sully Community Center up on Air and Space.
So another thing that we talked a lot about is just co-location it's not a perfect solution for everything. There can be some drawbacks. One of those things is thinking about security, thinking about privacy, talking like the police department, talking to other folks out there. We talked to them a little bit about it. They were concerned at sometimes co-locating with other facilities to make sure that like law enforcement officers are safe and protected. They have safe entrances, if their parking lots are secured. So there's things like that you got to think about with security. But then also like HHS, a lot of their facilities, Department of Family Services, there's a lot of federal state laws that require those facilities to be very secure, also have a lot of privacy, soundproof walls and things like that. So thinking about those things would be, there's a lot of design considerations when it comes to the co-location. So, and then another thing to think about too is once this facility is built, there's a lot of agencies in one building, on one property. Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to be in charge of the facility afterwards? So having really good agreements in place has been one. I know when I talk to a lot of agencies that have been involved in this, that has been an issue in the past. And so making sure that everybody's on the same page with that has been something we talk about.
They considered building housing on county land. So the county maintains ownership of the land.
Mm-hmm.
So that would reduce the price of the house.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely. So like I was just talking about the residents at Government Center, that's an example. So
the house or there's going to be condo.
There's multifamily, so it's not like single family houses. It's the efficiency of building single family houses for the purposes of creating more housing and affordable housing just isn't as realistic as building like a multifamily house. So,
Understood.
yeah.
I guess.
And there's not that much land that the county owns that where I think you can take advantage of that. But there might be some scenarios I'm not aware of, but
I was just thinking, I mean, that would be a major selling point to, you know, families of, school teachers, police, fire. that sort of thing.
Police, fire, unfortunately, teachers, people like myself cannot afford to buy a single-family house in Fairfax County anymore. Yeah, but that could bring the cost.
At least something like this.
That would, yeah, there's just not that much property out there, you know, to do that.
You're right, there's not that much flat property, but you're talking about.
Correct. Yes.
I born and raised north of West Virginia.
Yep.
When I was 30,000. But, you know, the downtown area was kind of your classic idea where you had ground retail.
Mhm.
And then you had even like offices.
Yeah.
Or residential.
Absolutely,
I
yeah.
can still remember my high school principal and like lived above, you know, some of the retail.
Mhm.
Urban high school.
Yeah.
All that up.
You don't see that as much anymore, where you can walk to the school.
Well, you know, that's another challenge. I think we said, well, this is becoming a more urban challenge.
Nope.
Number one, I say, well, what's the horizon here from rental plans for 50 years of land use?
Mhm.
And if you look at that, I mean, most of us here probably attended multi-level schools.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm sure yours and Queens was on. I mean, my high school was like 3 stories and a basement with didn't have any on-site recreation in the city,
Yeah, yeah.
but we had like a shared recreation facility.
Yeah.
So little things like that can make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about with the vertical development. We're seeing a lot more of that, like particularly with like fire stations. They're starting to have to learn how to not just build that one level fire station, but one that's like maybe 2 or 3 stories tall. Schools, I can't think of any in Fairfax County. There probably are examples. I know I've seen some in Arlington that are starting to design that way, where they're 5, 6 story.
So, I mean, if there are, we're talking New York City, of course, but there are high-rise buildings of 20 to 30, 40 stories, where the first four or 5 stories of that building are high school,
Mhm.
and then the residences are above the high school.
Yeah. I think we could see that with like some libraries or something like that, where you have a library on the first floor and the residential above it. I could see that happening too.
The rest of the library is being redeveloped,
Mhm.
and I think
They're talking about housing alongside that too. And I think maybe on top, but I haven't seen the final plans for that. But yeah, yep.
as long as they don't put shelter in the same building as the library. As long as my wife was the branch manager of the rest of the regional library, which was right next to it, so shelter.
Yeah.
That at the 8 o'clock when the residents, the shelter were told to go back to 5, they just went to the library.
Yeah.
And there were social and human resource issues associated with that.
I can imagine. Yep.
And one of the things that was successful, style,
Skyline.
in Arlington,
It's in Fairfax.
Right, it's private line. It's sort of kind of where Fairfax on the now.
where they residential. They get very successful in converting office. into
Yeah. Mhm.
Residential.
Yep.
And we have heard consistently throughout this county, can't be done, can't be done, no, can't be done. With excess office seem to experience.
Yep.
Why can't some of those turn into affordable?
I think it can.
Nobody's taken on the challenge.
It's not easy to do, but I'm not a housing expert, but you know, I have heard there are a lot of challenges, but I think I anticipate we will see more of that happening in the county.
Unless it's designed with the plumbing, the retrofitting with the plumbing.
It is difficult.
Going by that, look at the skyline. I worked with the skyline for 3 years. You can go into that building and it was nothing but offices. They're very successful in turning that into high-rise apartments. I wouldn't say they're inexpensive,
Right.
but the whole idea was the bottom floor, were commercial systems. I believe we all take
by Target.
Yeah, well, talking some of the school, but then above that is all residential. And they have fixed problems with all their trash, with lighting, and well, they have been fixed.
I think we'll see more. I think we'll see more of it.
I think several
It's
offices,
seven.
right after Salem.
Yeah.
Then there was DOT offices, and they had to read the septic
Yeah.
requirements and for security purposes, and we were talking to the planners, what we were going to do with so much of vacancy. So now we have started to plan.
Mhm. Yeah, I would like to see more of it. I hope we do.
Carry that out if you just security, carry that off back.
We just met with Braddock. They brought up the same thing last night. So
I a whole lot of stuff, just a little north of here. Been hitting it.
a lot around the county. I know.
Might be a little more like that. Hey, getting that.
So I think I already went over this kind of just talking about, we did interview the agencies too about One Fairfax policy and countywide strategic plan, just talking about how they plan on implementing it. Their agencies are doing a lot of different things to implement like new equity policies. Talking about the court system, they're trying to combine a lot of facilities at the same location so that it's easier on the folks that are going through the court system to be able to have things in one location. I know FCDOT has been working on providing some of their transit nodes, some of their bus stops, some of those things in places where people actually need them and where they can ride them, where the demographics fit right, so that those will be utilized more. There's a lot of different examples. I know the Department of Family Services I talked to, they expressed the need for wanting more satellite offices throughout the county so that they're not themselves driving all this county to meet clients, but coming into the neighborhoods where the clients are. They can stop, print some paper off if they need to, get some signage. So things like that can just make it better for residents overall and actually bring the meetings and things like that to residential areas as opposed to.
And for that, for example, we had like road and satellite offices, like that Alsburg.
No, I don't think we did. I don't know if there's a prototypical satellite office exactly. I don't know if there's a model that exists in the county. There could be one that I'm not aware of, but I know one thing they talked about was maybe trying to combine them at like board building like this, where there might be a room like this that's underutilized that could be utilized as times during the day, where like a Department of Family Services would come in, there'd be a computer that they could use, right? They'd come in and out, they'd show their badge, whatever, to get in and get access. So things like that. So I think we can see that. Just moving along, project timeline for this project. We are now obviously in the phase of doing some community outreach, going to the planning commission tomorrow. We plan on actually developing, finishing the draft language to the plan, the revised plan itself, and hoping to post that to the planning commission around January. And then meeting with the planning commission, getting some feedback from them, and then posting the actual new draft language to the public, and then having another round of meetings. So we'd be happy to come back and present to you guys when that happens, so the draft language will be out there for you all to review. And then hopefully moving through the review and approval process with the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors next spring. And then again, I talked to you earlier about how there's a whole other phase 2 to this project. So we see the finish line for part of it, but there'll be another phase with the area plans later. And again, I just encourage you all to check out the Plan Memo website and check that out. There will be meeting updates and things like that. And there'll also be a place where you can comment on the project as it moves along. So with that. There is no draft yet, so that's what I was saying. If you look back at the timeline, around January, I plan on publishing the draft to the Planning Commission, meeting with the Planning Commission, discussing with them, and then posting the draft to the public. Once I get feedback from the Planning Commission, doing some revisions, posting it to the public, so you all could review it, relay comments back to us. We do plan on also having some additional, public input, community-wide meetings at that time as well to give our feedback.
Does the mod have any impact on your area, or that's separate?
Separate, really, yeah. It's just zoning ordinance. I mean, with the comp plan, I would say drives the zoning ordinance, right? So the zoning ordinance doesn't drive the comp plan. comp plan's big picture kind of works its way down to the zoning ordinance, zoning ordinance is much more detailed. So,
Somebody has talked about, they think that the county engaged with outside consultants in the effort to make the process move smoothly. And that meant the biggest stumbling block that to prevent the process from moving smoothly is us doing this.
As not just an organization, as a community citizen.
Meaning to say, the public input, the public notice, the 4 or 5 meetings that you have to hold with us, that causes things to take longer than, or not longer than, longer than wished, longer than desired.
everybody has their desires, right?
Right, but the public is why the county exists.
True.
The people we elect, the people they appoint, ultimately are our representation, implement who we've elected, and so the buck stops with us. And if we're not satisfied with what has happened, next year's election time, right? And people get reelected or don't get reelected. So the concern that we have is the consultants who's trying to make things run smoother is in essence cutting out the ability for us to provide our necessary input. And some of the email traffic that I monitor, you can see that people are getting upset with the improvement processes because they feel that it's disrespecting the people who drive the processes as opposed to people who benefit from the process, the developers.
I've been on those local sector private sector side. That's a challenge. Private sector. So working for whoever your client is. Is it public or private sector? What's the driving change? And what are the set your law is? What do you success with it? You have a common definition of success. There are a couple ways to take it. But we need 2 or 3 more on the meeting. But there are some people that just slows the process. Yeah, you're making decisions. It's not a decision that will affect somebody 3 or 5 years. It's a decision.
Very long.
Impact 50 years.
Yeah, I agree with everything y'all are saying.
You can vote. Yes.
I think I'm done with my presentation, so.
All right, any other questions or comments that we have? And I want to thank you both for coming.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Keep us informed on the timeline or other things that we publish, something that we might be interested in or have interested to see.
We will let you know when it's published.
And we'll follow up on that. We in fact are having another group from your organization come this month for the land use meeting, where we're gonna have the, what is it?
Is that on Monday?
Next Monday, right?
Yeah.
Affordable housing. So we have been hearing over the months, incremental portions of the comprehensive plan of the counties move it forward. Some of which we had objections to, ZMIs, we had objections to agritourism originally. I mentioned to you the aviation situation. So, and others we hope to support and think, greater things than sliced bread. But it depends on where direction county wants to go. One of the things is that we've heard from the county is that although we're a county, we're really a large urban area. And that falls in large segments of the county, geographically speaking. They may be of low density, the difficult run corridor. Out in western Fairfax, where a good 40% of the forested area is in Sully. and there are large areas for the Aquacorn downzoning and so on. So when they say, well, you're really an urban county, well, no. Portsmouth aren't,
Yeah.
and you should treat all of the county under the same plan if in fact it doesn't fit.
That is difficult.
Don't be like the Cinderella's sisters who cut their toes off to put them in the shoe. Right?
It is difficult to create
What's that?
policy that fit.
Oh, yeah, that's the original story, get those toes off it.
It is difficult. It's a strategy we have is fitting policy for the entire county that fits every single area. You're right.
But that's what I'm
The
saying.
county is very different. It's very diverse in the people that are here. It's very diverse in actual physical, how the environment is.
That's exactly right. Got some of our neighboring counties struggling with the same thing, our friends across the river, people's Republic. You know, they basically said, well, there are basically three parts in Montgomery County. There's the part right next to the District of Columbia, higher density and such, along transit lines. And you did kind of that bid break. The county got its development taken place.
Yeah, they have like the
Then
circles.
their preservation area
Right.
to the north. And it's pretty interesting to drive through there because you kind of see, okay, I can see the change of the development.
Right.
You get into a very rural, very open space. Then as soon as you hit the line with Frederick County, bang, it starts redeveloping again.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you were here in the early '80s, you got over the county line into Loudon, you were in Sterling, and it was as if you were in close part to Arlington County and Fairfax, because the people who moved to Sterling didn't want to be Fairfax, they wanted to be playing cheaper, so they moved to Sterling. But yet, that was the highest density part of Loudon County, closest to the lowest density part of Fairfax. It was just, whoo.
Yep.
And
Or
in that
Texas.
sense, well, we've got county that's plus or minus
Yeah.
last census. Say, okay, what's the 40, 50, 100-year projection? What's so it doubles, 2.5 million. You look at that, the average density across the area, you say, that's not so bad. Compare that to
Queens, Brooklyn.
America, well, to other large counties.
I thought the Northern Virginia was losing population, was it losing population?
Some jurisdictions, I think.
Washington DC went down over the pandemic period.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But I mean, things are cyclical. It'll come back. Yeah.
No, they're better than just expenditure.
But yeah, you have a good point though. Like, there is still some room out there. So.
Okay, well, I want to thank you, Salem, again.
Yes.
Thank you, Bo.
Thank you all for
And
having us. All
we
right.
appreciate you being
Thanks for
here.
your time.
Thank you. If you have to leave now, we're going to go over for the next 5 to 10 minutes, just administrative trivia. And, okay, good to meet you. Thank you so much. Did you get our mailing today? Did we get some mailing out to the members of Sully District? And if you signed in over these sites, I will add your name to the mailing list, okay? So you'll have it. Okay, thank you. I'll have that. And Mo,
And Salem, did you slide in here, please?
Thanks a lot.
okay, so let me go back to the agenda.
Mo's got the name for you too.
Here. Yeah, theoretically.
Yes.
All right. So if we look at, on Monday, on the 21st of November, we have 4 items. The affordable housing preservation. And we have the special exemption of expanding Costco. We have a rezoning application of 10 acres to expand the land area to accommodate extra parking, extra optional delivery vehicle fleet. And that's going to be up underneath where Dulles Airport is, I think, north of Route 50, south of Dulles Airport. And rezone some parcels for the construction of the detached dwellings. That's what we have. Next month's meeting, we're planning to have representatives of Fairfax Federation here. You might see also that we had Prince William County Digital Gateway Plan okayed, and Fairfax County did send a letter, and we in the Fairfax Federation has sent letters opposing the development. Kathy Smith, as you may be aware, announced in the last meeting of the connection, not the current one, which just go out today, where that she's going to keep the name currently and think some more. And she quoted in the article that Bonnie Hobbs wrote in this interview, she quoted a good portion of our letter to the committee, the redistricting committee. And I read the words of Louis Graham, and I read the words of Jim Hart, who prepared the letter. And even though it says, let us talk about Jeff Barnes, these guys have made it. So thank you very much.
Even then, I can look at that. It maybe took me 30 to 45 minutes for my piece. Probably didn't take Sam a whole lot longer for this. So you say, two individuals can do a minimal amount of historical research, put together a recent argument in an hour. What these other people doing for months?
Understand?
That's all of it.
Okay, so there's an emergency preparedness survey that you can follow the link. There's the Resilient Fairfax, there's the Virginia Tech Transportation Institution survey for people who are commuting and ride sharing. There's the parks, recreational open space and access strategy, public policy. They're still looking for surveys. There's the county approved $5 million for pedestrian bicycle improvement, maintenance items, including safe routes to school. Next week or tomorrow night, the Fairfax Federation is sponsoring a public safety forum, which is a prepare for emergencies, what to do. Members of the Public Safety Committee and representatives of the county and other agencies will be there to discuss that. And if you're interested, you can click on it there. There will be a link. Next month, we do not have any land use cases on the 21st of December. That may or may not happen. If we don't have enough people, we'll just cancel the meeting.
I just emailed you the strategic plan coordinator.
Thank you. We'll contact them, and I appreciate that. Is that Rachel?
No, it's Amy.
Amy. All right. So it's all right. And the next month, as I mentioned, is Monday the 19th. We'll brief us on activities. All right. So you have the dates for next month. And amazingly enough, in November and December of 2022, there are major transportation items that are going to be complete. Yesterday was the first day that the Dulles Rail Silver Line all the way out to Loudoun County.
And revenues.
Revenue service, where you could pay to join, okay? Now, that also meant that one of the buses that service my community no longer services my community. So what we found is that although rail transit is much closer to our community, it's much further to walk to the next bus to get to it, so more people are gonna drive. Before, there was a bus that ran within a quarter mile of the house, now the bus is a mile away, so they're gonna drive to the train station rather than taking public transportation.
They also announced that, they're, increased. Yeah.
Is that?
Two, three, six. That was as soon as I ordered my
Transponder? AB switchable?
Yeah.
My wife, do you have 3 people in your car? Neither do I. My wife and I travel together, and so we said, even if we bought that 3 switch, we never use it.
Well, I ordered mine like 2 weeks before the change.
Yeah, but if you don't use it on a regular basis, they charge you for it. Well, the regular one, they don't charge you for
Is that
it.
right? I didn't
Yes.
know that.
Yeah. I have been driving with my son, and sometimes when you're coming from Maryland on 495, he will just go on the toll road, because he's got 3 people in it. He says, Adam, it's much faster. He says, no, but if I don't use it this month, I get charged $1 for not using it. He says, so this is my month use. I'm on it now. We got the 3 of us on it. We can go. Okay.
20 minutes.
No, this is just down from Montgomery County to the toll road. He gets over the toll road.
Oh, it's off the toll.
Yeah, because he lives in Reston. So he just goes on it for, half a mile, but he says, I triggered the use, now I'm okay.
And they also announced they're increasing the tolls on the double station.
Yeah,
Right. And this month also, they opened the westbound lanes on 66. They haven't finished the eastbound, right? I think that's what it is. Okay? And for those of you who don't live here, but are equally, there is what was called the East Side Access rail system, Long Island Railroad, where the trains from Long Island Railroad would always go to Pennsylvania Station. In the 1960s, they built a new subway tunnel underneath the East River, and they built a two-level service. This is in 68. The top level was for the subway, and they kept the bottom level for the Long Island Railroad. And this year, in 2022, 60 years after they, or maybe only 50 years after they built the tunnel, you can take trains from Long Island, and half of the trains will go into Grand Central Station for the people who work on the east side of Texas. And in order to solve the problem that Grand Central Station has more trains running there than any other station in the world, Pennsylvania has more not commuter, Amtrak trains. But Grand Central was, so they built it 10 stories underneath. And these are giant elevators going up and down, but it's so low because beneath the 3 levels of rail going to Grand Central, the 2 levels of subway underneath it, and then the Long Island Railroad. So you can see why it took a while.
Well, we'll be there about, in about a month, we're going to go to see a Broadway show.
Okay, which show are you going to see? Okay, all right, there you go. Okay, so in any case, that's what we stand now.
Recommendations for this.
Yeah, right, yeah. That would be.
Where,
Or least things.
where are you staying?
In Broadway, in the Broadway.
I will ask my wife. She has gone with her girl friends, but it's basically every year for the last 3 years. She and them go up and spend 4 days and have a great time up there. So I'll ask her what she can recommend. Okay. If you want in Times Square, they have Bubba. What was the guy from? But not Bubba Gump. The sheriff guy. Bubba Gump. All right, so there is the guy from Tom Hanks' movie, you know, and they've actually made a shrimp company based on that name. I mean, it wasn't as if the name existed before the movie, but because of the movie they made.
Museum, works.
Okay, maybe it's a chain.
Shrimp.
Yeah, that's it.
Shrimp company.
Okay, so hold on now. Before we go, I'm going to check. Is Mr. Jim, are you with us? I can't tell. All right, Jim, are you still with us? Oh, maybe he died. He left us. Okay, Jim was with us. So Jim heard this. All right, ladies and gents, thank you for coming.
I'll tell you that RHOA just completed new declaration.
That must have been hard to do.
67%. You had to have 14
Now, did that allow you to start holding virtual meetings, things like that?
We already have a right past resolution. What it now does is to assess violations.
Of yeah.
Because you have to have a specifically written.
Yeah.
Your documents. And we also incorporate electronic registration, so traffic law. So some limitations on everything. And 5 plus resolutions. Plus a lot of language changes. We're still using documents.
I'm glad to hear it. I will mention that to my Shelby Highlands site. Virginia Run can do it. Maybe you should reach out to Virginia Run and hire the same people. You have people knocking on the doors and asking people. When 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we were thinking of incorporating the trash service into our monthly fees. We don't do. So, and we were thinking, I remember being called once a fascist, another one, I was called a Nazi, fascist, another one a commie socialist. And I was going, well, you know, they're both equivalent organizations on either side. No.
You don't, always use the trash.
I'm rolling to the West Ox transfer station. I've been doing that since '85.
Everybody.
No. No, everybody, people hire Republican and American. We had 4 trucks going down different days. I hold my trash since '85. And other than, I'm only my wife and I, right? If I didn't have cats in the house, I'd have almost no trash. I have recycling, okay, but it's the cat litter that accumulates on a daily basis that causes me to have bags of trash. But if it wasn't for that, I'd go half a year almost if I had actually take the stuff to the dump. I mean, we recycle cardboard and plastic at a much higher frequency, but that doesn't cost anything to dump, get rid of. It's trash. My cats. Yeah, if before you get to the paid area, there's a big recycling, glass, plastics and, metal, cardboard, paper, batteries, bulbs, paint that you can get rid of, all these things. And I haven't, other than 3 months in 1990 when we had our home exchange with some people in France, and they didn't want to tell them, oh, you're trash. I hired service.
Fresh.
When I was with my French friends in October, one of the trips I took with the French friends, the husband, we went to the trash bin. So we did the same thing.
I think Europeans are more used to doing the separation of their garbage.
The thing was, he was trying to avoid a trailer that was out at a wrong angle. And we drove by it and I could hear it. Oh, his car's being. And we got out, he had plastic molding on the side of his car. And we looked, and there was a slightly different shade of the plastic molding, where a little bit had been ripped off by the thing. And I said, your wife will never notice this. Because we didn't know, if we didn't know to look for it, we wouldn't have seen it. But as soon as we got past the truck, we looked, what's the car look like? Oh, you looked out, Rudolph, you looked out. The plastic molding survived. All right, okay. And I may mention, I had a great time in Europe because I rode trams and high-speed trains. I was in a transit guy's holiday. Because both Amsterdam and Strasbourg run on trams. Basically 4 to 6 car-long surface trains. And Amsterdam also has a subway system, which is underwater because Amsterdam is below sea level to begin with. And we took high-speed trains from Strasbourg to Frankfurt, from Frankfurt to Amsterdam, and from Amsterdam to Brussels. Making trains. But
We're all basically paid by the government. Get the money for that. That's something.
oh yeah, and they want to. I think France has a big rule that if your air trip takes less than 90 minutes, it can't be flown in France. That any trip less than 90 minutes or 2 hours, whatever the number is, take the train.
The other European countries are picking up.
Because, by the time you get to the airport, which is not in town, and then wait for 2 hours to get on your plane, through security, you could have been in downtown Paris and got to downtown Strasbourg in less time.
And at lunch.
Okay, with that in mind, guys, anything else? See you next week for the big land use committee. Okay?
Check and see if we can get this room.
I'm gonna ask and see which room we'll get. I'm.
You, better checks, keep involved.
Let's see, I have those checks, let me go through with the positive.
Sometimes they're only good for 6 months.
Yeah, we'll move it back. And what else do we have here? All right, that's it then. And that's good. All right. I don't think. Or maybe I can bring next week, I think I can use my phone and just make the trip positive. All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming. When we were at Howard University,
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize Howard University is the top of a hill.
Passes for Hill and DC.
Yeah, and so we were there and my wife and they told us, I said, where do you park at Howard University? About a half mile away. And we got out and said, how do you get to the top? Oh, you go up this way, you go up this way. So I had to use my GPS, and we found out that if in fact you knew where you were, and the Howard Student Union is where the building was on the other side of campus, basically. But it was okay. We had a good time. Somebody left, what, who, what? Okay, good thing that she had your Oh, okay.